Well, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, no matter what time of day it is where you are. And if you're joining us on our live broadcast today, we welcome you. And if you're catching us on our replay, we also welcome you to today's episode. And as always, we're hoping we're going to bring you some ideas, some concepts that can really help and assist you in moving to a higher level, not just in business, but also in life. So today, what we're going to be talking about is the right words to use in communication, and how this can help us get what we're looking for, and how, as leaders, why words are so vastly important, and even in the world of sales and just getting along with other people. So I think we've got a really good subject matter today. So Cheryl, what's your thought on our subject matter today of the right words?
Well, I'm a big stickler for communication anyway. Anytime you hire anybody, you need to communicate with them, your family, business associates, anybody. Communication to me is about 99, or lack of, is about 99% of the problems in the world. So what you say, whether we're talking about business, but whether you're talking about world situations, whether you're talking about the color of this, it really doesn't matter. The wrong words can put so many people off.
Right, that's very true. And in fact, one time I can remember that I said something when I was in a training that someone actually felt offended by. And I actually, after that happened, Brandi and I actually called Brandi. I said, Brandi, do you think this was an offensive statement to make? And it actually wasn't, but it's the sensitivity of people that pick up on things. And that's where we have to be so careful. So, Brandi, what's your thought on today's subject matter?
Well, and I would add to that, one thing we should talk about today is the tone and the delivery as well. I was in a mediation earlier this morning with a client, and that's one of the things that we talked a lot about is the delivery and the tone. I can say something, and I'll give an example later, but I can say something and it depends on how the tone is, how it's perceived. And it can be the exact same words.
That's exactly right. So stick around. We'll be right back and we'll get into the meat of today's subject matter. So, welcome back. So, when we talk about communication, we talk about the right words to say. I want to give you a couple things that are going on in the real world. If you're in the political world, then here's the key thing. You've got to say words that attract over 50% of the people that are going to vote. You don't have to attract everyone. Again, that's the goal. I've got to attract, as a politician, 50% or more of the people that will vote. And I've got to say words that are going to attract them. And many times the words that are said are so offensive to those that don't support that person's point of view that we have this big challenge going on of people love a leader and other ones hate the leader because of what they're standing for. Now, as I go into this, I'm also going to give you a view of a sports league. And in the sports league, there was a young man several years ago, extremely talented, very talented. And what he did in a communication, he said one word that was held suspect, and he was banned from that sport for over a year. His sponsor terminated the agreement, everything else, because he used a word that is highly offensive to many people. And it's on the no list of words that you're not supposed to say today, but it's words that were commonly used much earlier in lifetime. This week, I was on an analysis visit, and the client I was visiting with is getting ready to open up a retail showroom. So one of my questions was, who else in this market area will be competing against? And he told me, and the other company was 9/10 of a mile up the road. So I said, okay, I'm going up. I'm going to play poor, dumb Southern boy consumer in the northeastern United States. And I'm going to just walk in the door. I want to see what they got, and let's see what their attitudes are. And to be honest with you, from the very first words, the very first that this gentleman said, turned me off to this company, because I asked him, I'm looking for a new wood stove. Hey, I'm thinking about moving up in the market area. Let's face, he could tell that my accent meant I was not from that area. And the very first words out of his mouth discouraged me to buy a product, because he said, well, so you know, we don't have nothing in stock at this point. It's really hard to get product in this day and time. And it's like, whoa, just go ahead and discourage me right off the bat. So the two ladies that are with me, they also do interview, they do coaching, those kind of things. And those are the things that we work with. It's just like Brandi just said. She was in a meeting this morning because people, their words were creating a tremendous amount of chaos and turmoil in the company. And we see this happen so often. And this is why in the world of coaching, we have to really look at what we're doing. I also know one renowned public speaker, and he has actually retired from the world of public speaking because of what we're going to call the United States of the offended. People in this day and time are so easily offended. If you want to see the difference, just go to YouTube and pull up television commercials from back in the 50s and 60s. And many of these commercials, there's no way these companies would run these commercials today. They were insulting to wives. There were different things out there, and it talked about, it's like, raise your child on cola. Now, can you imagine part of that was back in 40, 50 years ago that you poured a cola drink into your child's bottle? But it's the difference in the words and what you've got to do to attract people today. So Sheryl, what's your beginning thoughts on our words here about the right words to use in your communication?
Well, as Brandi said, and I'm going to let her go farther with it, it's the way you say them. A lot of words aren't offensive to 99% of the people, but it's the one person that you attract when you say it incorrectly. And we're speakers, and we are taught to guard our words. We have to, because words, when we're speaking, do two things. They either attract someone or they turn them off. I mean, you can be in a crowd of speaking to 500 people, and if the words that you're saying do not attract anyone, you have spent a long time doing nothing.
Yeah.
And so that's where I basically see it as a use for anyone, what you say and how you say it, and at the time you say it. You don't want to wait too long into a past conversation to come back with something. If you've got something to say and it's important and it's worded correctly, go ahead and insert it at that time, because it will have much more meaning than if you go back and say, I wish I had have said.
Yeah. So Brandi, what's your initial thoughts on this subject matter?
So many thoughts. Since I started with tone, I'll start there and then expand. So what I mean by tone is I'm going to pretend, I'll use Cheyenne in my office. I'm going to pretend that I just found out today she needs off this afternoon. She didn't put in a time off request form. Now, my body language matters too. If I can go tromping into her office and say, can you tell me why you didn't put in a time off request? And right there, didn't it feel like I was attacking you? It felt very offensive. Or I can knock on the door. Hey, can I talk to you for a minute? Can you tell me why you didn't put in a time off request for that? Totally different vibe that you're going to get, totally different answer you're going to get just by the way you ask the question. So this morning in the mediation, something had blown up between two people at this office yesterday. It was one incident, and how I started the conversation with them is, yes, this incident happened, but the way it blew up, it has nothing to do with that incident. There's more that's happened in the past. It's kind of like when you go to marriage therapy and you're saying you're fighting over the way you cook chicken, and they're like, oh no, it's never about the chicken. There's a whole backstory. It's about so much more. So what people are not saying is more important than what they are saying. And it's really important that we honor their story, whatever their story is. So for example, in my chimney and fireplace company, nobody is ever calling for just a cleaning and inspection. And if you think that that's all that they're calling for and that's all you put in the notes, then you're not doing your job, in my opinion. Nobody is calling for just a cleaning inspection. There is a story there. Maybe the story is they just moved in the house. Maybe the story is they haven't used the fireplace in 10 years and they want to use it. Maybe the story is they're the person that is really concerned about safety, and so they like to have it cleaned and inspected every single year. But there is some story there besides just, I need a cleaning and inspection. And so it's really important that we investigate, interrogate in some situations, and honor their story.
Yeah. And like I said, you just brought up things. More than likely, what's affecting this is what I call past life experiences. What you have here is you have a resentment built in. And this is one of the things that I often tell people. And this is also what we call the perceived risk in business, where you're making a sales presentation and it's like people would think that the right word to use is warranty. However, there's another connotation of warranty, and the warranty could possibly bring up thoughts of a past life experience, such as, well, I had a washing machine and it had this lifetime warranty on it, but when I needed something, no one was there for me. No one was willing to help me. But you got to remember the words you use, how are they going to be accepted? Now, last week, I was a speaker at Tommy Mello's vertical track event. And there was there was a whole, I mean, I was really honored because this was a whole roster of very high level speakers came in. And one of them, his name was Michael Barnoff. Okay. So Michael talked about communication and he talked about how people interpret what you say. So one of the questions he said, here's a common example. I'm going to ask a question. Do gyms work? So Brandi, when I asked you that question, do gyms work? What do you think? What would be your answer?
Off the top of my head, just yes.
Okay, but here's the other side. Gyms don't work. People work when they go to gyms. Gyms provide you a place to do this work, but the gym doesn't do anything. It doesn't do any of the work for you. So I just got his book in because I'm going to delve deeper with him. It's called Average Sucks, and it's all about communication styles. And part of getting there, of like describing what you do, how do you do it? What is the purpose of what you're doing out there? And Brandi, it was like when you talked a while ago, as you were talking about your experience there in the office, one of my things that I would say, walking and ask her, said, Cheyenne, I can't locate your time off sheet for this. Could you tell me where I could find it? So instead of coming in with an accusatory statement to start, which puts up the wall, we're entering in with a question, and we're even saying where I can't find it. Can you help me find this? Which is a total different way to start the conversation. Now, Sheryl, you're a really good person at communication, and you know you're communicating with people in all levels. It could be through coaching them. It could be in the interview process with new hires. So where would you take this to?
Well, basically, when you're doing your interviews and all, you have to be very careful of what you say, government regulations. But the thing about it is, I go at it probably a little different because I'm doing first call hiring for these companies, and I can go in as the little Southern woman that will listen to your story, as Brandi was talking about, and I can get them talking by asking the normal questions, and then they just automatically start talking. And if you can get a person communicating with you, especially in an interview, then it becomes a conversation, not an interrogation. Because people don't like being interrogated. They don't like being questioned. I can tell about by the fourth question when they're sitting there like a stone log and going, yes, no, yes. I have got to rework my words to make it more of, tell me your story. I don't put it that way, but that's what I'm looking for. I want to hear what's in their head and their heart, because that's what's going to lead them into being a good or a poor employee, is what they are actually, their culture and what they're made up of.
So you're saying that people assume you are a sweet Southern woman just coming in from your accent. Would you agree with what I just said?
Yeah, and I really don't try to cover it up. And the farther north I go, the more I make the accent work.
Yeah.
I'm actually interviewing somebody from up north for me is easier because they associate you. You're not one of their hardcore people. You're just somebody that's there to help them get a job, which I am if they're the right person for the job. So yes, my accent actually plays into the interview. And it's, when I hear them say, I love your accent, I know I've got it. I know I can work with it. And I know I don't want to use the word use, but I do. I use that accent as who I am. And I mean, you can look on the Zoom and you can figure out I'm not 29 anymore again and again. But they just begin talking. They tell you about your kids, about anything they want to talk about. And that's the way I try to lead my interviews, not as an interrogation, but as a conversation.
Right. So, same thing. You just talked about tonality, you talked about accents. And one of the things that I have in life is people would think that I have a very gruff voice. This is the voice I was born with. This is the way I speak. So many times I can simply say the word good morning, and the way it comes out, and we used to, and this is no lie, when I had a retail operation, I took myself off the phone. I refused to answer the phone because, and Cheryl's shaking her head, yes, because people, just because of my tone of the way I speak, they thought I was upset. So, these things are hard to change. And when you come into it, then I've got the issue of I speak around the country and I speak with a Southern accent. And the best I can tell you is what Jeff Foxworthy, the comedian, said, that people deduct 10 points of our IQ simply because we speak with a Southern accent. And it's very true. And I often bring this up when I'm teaching. Like I just did a class this week. And I said, I know you guys have watched probably the Andy Griffith show somewhere in your life, and there's some wonderful philosophy on the Andy Griffith show, but I'm not Andy and I'm not Gomer Pyle. You may associate my voice with them or Goober or somebody else that was on this show. So let's look at what we can accomplish here today. So, Brandi, as you're hearing all this, what's the next thing that comes into your mind?
Well, we have to empathize with people as well. So not give them sympathy, but we have to empathize with their situation, whatever that may be. And I will tell you, if I was thinking about this and I was thinking back, when was that the most challenging for me? And it goes back to my days as a nurse in the hospital taking care of an inmate. And oftentimes we find out from the guards or somebody what this person did to end up in prison. And it could be that they killed their whole family. It could be that they robbed a bank. None of that matters. I have to empathize with the fact that now their gallbladder has ruptured or now they have cirrhosis of the liver, and I'm there to do a job and take care of them and empathize with that. I can't let whatever they did in their past or whatever landed them in prison get in the way of that, or I'm not taking good care of them. Have you read the book Split the Difference by Chris Voss?
I have not.
So I'm very intrigued by him. I ordered his book and then my husband was like, I already read it on Audible, but
wait a minute, you can't read it on Audible.
Well, he already listened to it on Audible. I agree. I have to read. I can't listen, but I'm putting together this class that I'm teaching that I'm very excited about on how hostage negotiation techniques can teach us a lot about customer service techniques. And so I'm delving deep into that. And so the reason the book is called Split the Difference is he gives the example of you have a bank's been robbed and you have 4 hostages, and it's called Never Split the Difference. I'm sorry. You can't say, okay, give us 2 hostages and then you can kill the other 2. That's splitting the difference. And you can't do that in business. And he goes in and talks a lot about how and this was interesting to me, you want to hear no more than you want to hear yes. It's easy for people to say yes. So in every question, you want to flip it around. So he gives the example of instead of saying like, do you want 3 tickets? Say, are you committing to buying 3 tickets, or can you commit to buy 3 tickets now? So what that would look like in the chimney industry, maybe I'm booking an appointment, and instead of saying, would you like to book? Because then it's easy for them to say no. I would say, can I go ahead and get you to commit to this appointment on this day and time? So he said most people would rather have their fingernails pulled out than say no, if I didn't say that already, which I thought was fascinating. And I guess I'm going all around the map today, but the other reason he's interesting to me is because he was actually a KCK police detective before he was ever an FBI agent.
Yeah, I understand. So if someone just saw a very inappropriate comment come in on our chat, I do apologize. That was from someone who just spammed our broadcast, and I do apologize. If you saw that, that was not from us. It just came up. And that's what happens right here. But as you look at it, did you see how Brandi said, Jeremy said he had read the audible? Okay. And these are the holes in the system of what goes on. So, Sheryl, I'm going to go to you next, and you'll remember the situation of what I'm talking about here. And I've actually talked to Brandi about this, about how do nurses learn to communicate and reassure patients. And the incident I'm going to go back to is a nurse in an intensive care unit when my mother was on her deathbed. And the communication of this person and the way they were there, it was like unreal. In fact, I asked Brandi one time, how in the world do you deal with this when you have a patient that you know is going to pass away? And you see this family and they're right on the emotions are so high there. So, Sheryl, do you remember when my mother was dying and we were in that intensive care unit, and how that nurse, it was a male nurse, was establishing such a relationship and such care for what we were going through?
I do remember it. And the whole family was there. It was very, they were very open to everyone. He did not try to paint over the problem, but he had a huge empathy for what was going on. He remained with us the time during that period of time we were waiting, which made it a whole lot different. In fact, if you remember, the doctor came in and waited with us.
Mm-hmm.
Not only the nurse, there were actually 3 nurses in there and 1 doctor when your mom passed. And that made a huge difference. It does. And I remember my father when he had his neurosurgery. I'm different probably from a lot of females, especially. I'm a little more black and white. And Dr. Brawley, my dad's surgeon, realized that I didn't need the pat on the back and the it's going to be okay. He knew I could deal with anything I knew. And so he was very open to me. To my mom, he had to be a different way. And so I admired him so much because he was that way. I got the information I needed. My mom got the cuddling that she needed. And that's what you need. Like you say, especially when your mom was down, they were there. I'm going to say they were all there for each of us in our own way.
Okay. So, Brandi, you teach all day seminars just like Sheryl and myself do, and we're going on. Now, whenever we go into a seminar, we're actually practicing what we're going to say, that we're going through it. But see, in real world, you can't do that so much. But on the other side of the coin, when you're teaching a seminar, you really cannot predict the questions that are going to come out of the audience. And what you can't do is belittle people for a stupid question. There is no such thing as a stupid question except the one that you don't ask. So how do you prepare, and how do you keep from a comment throwing you completely off base? Because that's what you have to do every day whenever the phone rings. Whenever you meet a customer, you got to be prepared for comments that may sound ludicrous and stupid, but they're a customer and they deserve an answer. So what's your thought on that?
Well, I like to anticipate what questions might come up, but you can't anticipate everything. So I think you just take the question as it comes in and treat it like if your employee or anybody else was asking you a question, and you take a moment and you pause and reflect and think of what is the best answer for this situation. There's a quote by Anne DeVere. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing her middle name right, Smith. And she says, I think we can learn a lot about a person in the very moment that language fails them. And I love that quote. And sometimes the language does fail me, and I just have to stop and pause a minute and think, okay, how am I going to respond to this question?
Right. And so, Cheryl, what about your thoughts? What do you know when you're practicing what you're going to say? I mean, we have seminars that are lined up for next year that I'm sure you're already running through your mind the words you're going to say whenever we walk onto a stage. But what about these day-to-day things, the things that may catch you off guard? How do you make sure that the words you're saying are words that are not going to drive a wedge between you and that person?
It's just a matter of thinking and saying what you don't want to say something wrong, and you don't want to say something just to appease them. You want to give them an answer. And I think that's where a lot of us fall short, is because of giving an answer. We just snip over the question and make it go on. But when you're speaking in front of people, or when you're speaking on a one-on-one, guard your words. Make sure that the words are what the people need to hear. And a lot of times we have to not tell them what they want to hear, because the question is revolving around something they need to hear.
Right. So a couple of years ago, I put together a seminar, and I've actually broke this out in some other seminars. It started out as what I called a sales success seminar for a technician in the field, but we enlarged that into for CSRs and also for retail show people and how communication comes into play. Now, in that, one of the things I did was I went through and I utilized a lot of the books that one of my mentors that I'm certified by, Jeffrey Gitomer, put together. But these were some of the things that we advise people to do, because you're going to have people that are going to call you on the phone, or you're going to their home, or you may be on a retail showroom floor, and they come in and they tell you what their problem is. Remember, 70% of the people that are going to buy from you in business have a problem. They're coming to you to solve a problem. And what they're actually doing is they're crying out, I need help. So here is some things for you to say. This is a list of what I call some great first words. Number one is great. Number two, no problem. Number three, that's my favorite problem to solve. Number four, I think we can solve this. Number five, I'm sure there's a way. Number six, I think I can help. Number seven, yes, we can handle this for you. Cool, that's easily taken care of. Thanks for sharing it with me. Can do, we're a can do company. We take care of problems just like this every single day. Consider it done. We're going to take care of that. The best, the fastest, the easiest way to handle that is as follows. Brandi, what do you think about the responses I just gave? Okay.
Oh, you had to ask. I liked them all except one, and that was the no problem one. I actually have worked all summer with a company on this because they were really big about saying no problem all the time to the customer. The customer would say, okay, yeah, thanks for booking the appointment. And they would say no problem. The problem with saying no problem is that it alludes to the fact that there is a problem. And so I would rather somebody say my pleasure. You know, if you go through the Chick-fil-A line, that's what they say. I would rather, if they say, thank you for booking my appointment, I would rather say my pleasure rather than allude to no problem, there is a problem. So that's, I think the other words were great. That was my only peeve.
Gotcha. So I scored in Brandi's mind. I just scored a 9 out of 10, which is great. And that's what you do. And that's also why you do role playing. You actually sit here and say those words. And as they come out, as Brandi was listening to those, she heard a lot of good ones. One, she had a way to improve. And see, that's what you got to do in life. You have to work towards this continuous, ongoing improvement in what you do. So, Sheryl, what's your thoughts? And hey, I want to thank our buddy, Al Levy, who has joined us out there. And he said, words do matter. And how you say them also matters. Good stuff. And last week, Al was on the stage. I was on the stage. Al was able to, first time Al had ever heard me speak. And I'd heard Al like 10 years ago, but the words that we spoke on vertical track were vastly important. And we were dealing with a varied type of businesses. We had chimney people, HVAC, plumbers, garage door people, air duct cleaners, pressure washers. You go on, because we had all types of home improvement people there. So Al, appreciate you being there. And as always, we really appreciate our friendship with you, my friend. So Sheryl, where's your thoughts there?
I'm kind of like Brandi, I don't like that one either. But basically, you can take a lot of words and change them up a little bit and make them good. But you taught me a lot about response, and you probably don't exactly understand that. A lot of stuff I wouldn't say. But the one thing I will say is you used to put me on a stage with you, and I had no clue what we were going to talk about.
Yeah.
Sheryl, so you're saying nothing's changed, right? Because
yeah,
even for this, he just gives us a topic, but we have no idea where it's going.
We have no idea what we're doing till we sit down here.
Well, you don't, because you get into discussion. So you'll know the way we put this broadcast together is I send them a topic. This is what we're going to be talking about Friday. Now, we may have a guest on, and some weeks it's just going to be the three of us here. But yeah, and what it's for is to get them to form it. I don't want to form the thoughts for them. I want them to get it out. But again, we're talking about customers, and this is the challenge you have with customers, and you also have the same challenge with the people you lead. So when I get ready to say the words I am, what I want you to think of is remove the word customer and insert the word team member, staff member, employee, whatever you're always calling your people. So here's the challenge. You got to understand your customers. Number two, you got to be prepared to serve your customers. Number three, you got to be ready to help an angry customer immediately. They're not going to take being put off. You got to be able to ask customers for information in order to help them. You got to be able to listen to your customers. And listening is a very hard skill to learn. You got to be responsible for your actions. You got to live up to your commitments. You got to be memorable. You got to be able to surprise customers with what you're doing. You got to strive to keep your customers for life. And what you've got to do is you've got to build up a list of unsolicited referrals and testimonials for what you do. That's the challenge of business. And as we look at it, Brandi, would you say that's what you're training your people, the CSRs, the dispatchers, and your clients? Is that what you're training them to do with the communication methods?
Yes. I never want them to miss the opportunity to discover what the real concern is. But I wanted to circle back to something you said earlier, because it's been bugging me this whole podcast. When you went to that hearth shop, was that the owner or was that an employee?
I'm unsure, because he never told me his name.
Because I'm thinking, that was the employee who should be fired.
Yeah, there were three people in that showroom, and I have no idea which one they was. There was no identification. There was no business card given to me. There was nothing to carry out that door. In fact, he told me a couple things, and he had something. He walked away and went to the other side of the showroom. So is this an easy company for my client to whip their butts? Yes, it is.
I will tell you though, Jerry, I've struggled with that with CSRs over the years, where especially right now, this time of year, they personally are emotionally feeling like we're so far booked out, and that they're taking that on for the customer, that feeling that they get through their script and the customer's ready to book, and they go straight to, well, we are booking out really far right now. Instead of saying my next available date, or we'll be in your area. And again, what tone does that set when you say, well, we're booking out really far right now? That's telling me like, maybe you don't want to book me.
Right. But I'm going to take that even further. We all three have worked with a client that before you two started working, it was one that had a retail and a service operation. So you can kind of run through your mind. And what was happening was the people on the showroom floor decided that there was no sense selling any more product because they couldn't install it for 6 more weeks, and they gave up on sales. Okay, I'm really serious. Well, should we sell something? Because they're just going to get mad because we can't get it installed till such and such a date. And they stopped selling. Okay, and that was a joint client that all three of us have worked with. here at CVC Success Group. So Cheryl, what's your thoughts as we go through this?
Well, it all goes back to communication and what you perceive and what you say and the way you say it. And there's a few words that kill me, and the main one and sales is budget. That number or that word will automatically lose you a sale with me. And a lot of people don't understand that. And if anybody would like to know, if they'll get in contact with me, I'll let you know why. But to me, that's a detrimental word, so I don't use it. So if something really bothers you, try to change it to something else. If you see it bothers someone else, try to change it. You can't change every word, but I think if you take things and work them within and go with it, I think we can all become better speakers, better leaders, better people in general. And I've read the book that you held up earlier, Average Sucks. That's a really good book. And a lot of it's about communication. A lot of it's actually that average sucks. And is that a good title? And I go back to it only because we're talking about words. It leads a person. I wanted to read it because average sucks caught my mind. Well, that didn't turn out well, did it?
Okay.
But yeah, I think we're on the right track here. I think a lot of things Brandi has said, she works with these people, and we all do. I've gotten some ideas myself.
Right. Now, Brad just brought up an interesting comment here. And I want to address that, Brad, because I'm actually, Brad, glad you brought it up. And I'm going to ask you a question. You can give me your own answer here. But you say that if you build a good reputation, most customers are willing to wait for superior service. So, Brad, I'm going to ask you a question. Your commode is leaking in the floor. The water is running out, or the bathtub is leaking. Something detrimental is happening. Are you willing to wait 3 weeks? Or are you going to grab somebody that can take care of this problem immediately? And see, that's one of the things. A lot of people do have a low level of patience. So it's going to depend on what you're doing as far as that's concerned. Brandi, I believe you have had a garage door company at your home on a Sunday morning or Sunday afternoon because your garage door did not operate. That was A1 Garage Doors, our buddy Tommy Mello. And you knew you were going to pay more, but the door needed to open, which that's the thing I learned about the garage door industry in the last couple of weeks is it's truly amazing how many people have garage door issues that need someone out. Because here's the whole thing. It's amazing the consumers that do not know you can pull a rope and make the door go down or go up if the opener doesn't operate. Again, it's where they're at. Okay, so Brad, you see what I'm talking about. Emergencies are a higher priority, of course, in any business. So again, Brad, I want to point that out because there's different ways that people take the language in which you're using. So Brandi, back to you. What's your thoughts at this point?
Well, my thought is after the show, I need to know Sheryl's. I want to learn more about what she said because I was thinking that is interesting. I want to know more about that. So Sheryl, we'll need to talk about that offline. But no, I agree. And we are in a different industry in the fireplace and chimney than garage doors. And we say that all the time. It goes into why I tell people that our CSR booking rates are not going to be the same as a heating and cooling company or a plumbing company because the only emergency in the chimney and fireplace industry is a flue fire, and you should call the fire department.
Yeah. So you look at that and you're exactly right because Brandi, we had the discussion this week. One of our joint clients, they posted on our joint discussion about where the calls booking had dropped. And that was one of the things because I posted what my expectations and my goals were. And then Brandi brought it from a different point of view, which is the wait time in the fall is going to drop the closure rate of those calls. Because if we look at these companies in other industries that run what we'll call emergency calls, HVAC, plumbing, garage door, and Al's on here and can speak to this also about emergency 24-hour a day service, those kind of things that are going like that. So again, you've got to understand, but if you'll notice how we're actually picking each other's words apart because the listener is comprehending things. So Cheryl, what's your next thoughts in this discussion?
Keep words simple. I think that's a lot. I mean, I've watched a lot of people that try to impress me with huge words. And, I can learn a word a day. I played that game for years. But without the knowledge of being able to speak the word correctly, they don't know if you're telling them to jump off a bridge or if you're offering them something nice. So guard your words, but also know that what you're speaking will resonate with the person you're speaking to.
Okay. So Brandi, I'm going to ask you a simple yes or no question. Is communication skill important in being able to succeed in life and in business?
All right, fine. I'll say yes, but it's hard for me just to say yes.
know
I want to give a story, but yes, it is.
Okay.
It is.
Cheryl, would you
critical.
agree? Would you agree or disagree that the skill of communication, let's face it, when you interview someone, is their communication skills part of what you're listening to?
Yes.
Okay. So with that in mind, I want to give you, this is what the noted motivator and person who wrote some books, he has passed away. His name is Jim Rohn. And this is a quote from Jim Rohn. Whatever you want, study it first. If you want to be a doctor, study medicine. If you want to be a success, you hang around successful people and you study success. Be a student first. Always be a student. You're not just a father, you are a student father. You're not just a teacher, you are a student teacher. And I often make this little thing about, if you look at attorneys and doctors, do you know what they say? We practice medicine, we practice law. And my question is, okay, when are you going to stop practicing and start doing this? But the whole thing is, in those occupations, there's a tremendous amount of ongoing research. You got to be aware of what the past laws are of if you're an attorney. You got to be aware of what new laws are coming into effect. And Brandi, in the medical profession, how much do you have to be studying to be aware of the changes in medicine? What is that like for a person in the medical profession today?
Oh, I mean, there's new inventions, new medications, everything coming out every single day. So depending upon your specialty, I mean, you're continually learning.
Right. But you've also got to do what my client said this week. He said, I hate when people talk doctor to me. And what that meant was they were communicating in a style and with words and with vocabulary that we don't even understand. And it goes down to business. And this is something else that we practice and stress and preach here, which is you got to remember, someone new comes to work in your business. And one of the first things that we have to teach them is the skill of the vocabulary that we use. We are using words. Now, to quote one of Brandi's previous employees, who was one of the best students I have ever seen, I can't remember her name right off the top of my head. Brandi, what was her name? Olivia. So Olivia taught me something. And Olivia taught me the following, and this is something you need to be aware of. She said, Jerry, you got to understand, I'm a millennial. I do not like to hold up my hand and ask a question. So that was why she was so successful in studying and getting her certification in rapid order, because she knew how to use virtual training. She knew how to use the tools. So that's what you've got to do. If you're listening to us, again, if you're going to be a success in business or in life, the better communication skill that you have, the better you're going to be. It's simply the way you are. Just owning a business doesn't make you a leader. No more being elected to an elected office makes you a leader. Your leader comes from your skills. Your leadership comes from understanding those that you lead. So Sheryl, is there anything you would add for this?
No, I just want to suggest that people take the time and study themselves, because without knowing themselves, they don't know how to communicate with others well.
And that's the truth. You know, it's a really interesting thing when you can hear your own conversations that have been recorded and what you've said, or when you're on a videotape and you actually look in the things that you said. I can remember many times people don't even know what they're saying. So, Brandi, what would be your closing thoughts for today?
I would just reiterate what you just said about like the doctor speak, for example. Instead of saying you have high blood pressure, the doctor says hypertension, thinking that he's going to use that impressive language, and the patient has no idea what that is. Remember that in whatever industry you're in. I always try to paint a picture for a customer when I'm explaining a smoke chamber and why we parge it. But so often, especially I see this with technicians, they get this knowledge and they want to throw out fancy codes and fancy words and fancy terms. And if that doesn't translate, if that doesn't communicate to your customer, then they're not going to buy from you because they have no idea what you're talking about. So they don't care.
You're dead on the money. So, closing out today, this is Jerry Eisenhower, Brandi Biswell, Sheryl Eisenhower from CVC Success Group. And we do this every week. Our mission in doing this every week that we can get all three of us together. Sometimes it's two of us, and sometimes we don't even pull it off some weeks because the travel has prevented that. Because I found out one thing, I really can't do a broadcast from a seat on an American Airlines plane. It just don't work. Even though I did do a broadcast earlier this week from a motel that was built in the 1950s that did have decent access. So you can do a lot of things if you really try. So anyway, if you have questions, if you have processes you'd like to know about, if you need somebody to help you design a path, help you get to that dream destination in life, you're seeing all three of our email addresses on the screen right in front of you right now. Feel free to reach out. We'll set up a conversation. If you reach out to one of us and it's another one's expertise, believe me, I'll refer you over real quick, as I've done several times when it relies on one of these ladies' expertise. Like I was asked earlier this week, well, you're talking about this DISC assessment. Do you know all that? It's like, no, that's what I got her for. I take her the questions and I ask her because she's the expert. When it comes down to software, guess what? Brandi, you're getting the call, right? I don't know how to manipulate that software. And to be honest with you, I ain't going to learn at this point in life. That's what I got Brandi for. So appreciate you joining us. And we'll see you next time on the next episode of the Chimney and Fireplace